I love the Water Dungeon's music, by the way. Every Dark World dungeon has its own theme, although that feeling is almost ruined when you learn that they're all remixes of the same Zelda 1 dungeon theme. That makes them feel lazy, but they all have such distinct feels that I didn't catch on when playing the game for the first time. And again, every dungeon is designed around one item anyways, destroying the point of giving you access to every item right away. This is the Hookshot dungeon. It's also about raising and lowering the water level to interact with higher and lower areas. The hookshot can actually pull levers on the wall towards Link so you can pull them, affecting the water level, as well as take a certain annoying enemy out of his shell so you can attack it, and pull Link along a raft, hookshotting various targets. So right away we have it being used in creative ways. It's annoying that the gray jellyfish that get in the way of the targets take so many hits to kill the hookshot, when in the original game, it was better once again because it just took one hit with the hookshot to either die or split into two one-shottable enemies. This dungeon makes you appreciate the fact that you can finally open chests from any direction, because I opened a chest despite the raft being northeast of it. You can even open chests from on top of them. Too bad the chests generally feel so worthless most of the time. They should have a lot of money in them at the very least, but instead stuff like, here's one monster horn. The hookshot can also grab a key, and diagonally at that. Every time you do something diagonally, it shows off the better technology because that was impossible in the original game. Then there's a tricky puzzle where the hookshot can't hit a switch because it's on a lower elevation, so I had to throw a bomb at it and have it explode at the right time. It was so finicky though, I could have sworn I got it right multiple times and it didn't work. What's also tedious about it is that you constantly have this arrow firing out of a wall at you while you're trying to focus on the puzzle. Now after that, I learned that while the hookshot has plenty of new creative uses in this dungeon, they still did their part to make the original game have positive qualities over this one because they arbitrarily robbed the hookshot the ability to hook onto chests and pull Link to them. I'm willing to bet it doesn't do that with jars anymore either. Why? One of the best things about the hookshot was its ability to send you towards those things faster, and send you over pits to chests and jars at the same elevation, which would take advantage of the elevation gimmick that this game has. Without that iconic ability, this hookshot has practically nothing in common with the one from Link to the Past. The dungeon also has flowing water that acts as barriers to progression because they send you into bottomless pits, so you have to divert the water flow to progress. It's just having pits at all makes this dungeon different from the original. First time, it's by hitting a switch with the hookshot because suddenly now you're at the right elevation to do that. And god, I really hate that jellyfish enemy. It constantly gets in the way of my hookshot trying to hit switches and it just won't die. This room is for hitting switches to fill it up with water, letting you go to another floor and fight a very tedious wall of health golden jellyfish. It's an extremely boring, tedious fight where I swear the electricity takes longer to go away than in the original game. It's got boring generic music too. It reminds me of the boss you used the whip on in Skyward Sword. It would be a lot easier to deal with it if they didn't shove the regenerating meter concept down your throat on items that shouldn't even run on it. It would have been fine if they had magic jars here. I would have loved to just throw bombs at it or hookshot it constantly, but instead that damn meter just has to run out and then take eons to fill back up again from the very bottom, forcing me to only throw one bomb at a time. In Link to the Past, I could have filled up my magic meter at any time by just drinking a blue or green potion. I could use my sword, but then I get electrocuted for sure because the jellyfish electrifies itself with the speed of light with no warning, as do its children when it splits up. Can I compliment the dungeon map again though? How did I play Zelda games without it? I always see the map on the bottom screen along with indications of where the chests, staircases, and doors are. And the map even shows you where the main water level switch is in this dungeon. It's a big help rather than having to manually explore. Why did they think I needed a bomb enemy to break open the cracked floor? I have infinite bombs. Do they think the audience is so stupid that they need a hint like that? It took a while for me to realize that they put this there just in case you didn't rent the bombs, but why would they ever assume that you wouldn't rent the bombs? The water elevation altering room creatively shows off the elevation because there's rupees that you can only dive down to collect once the water level is low enough. And they make it obvious that the left lever makes the water go down because there's a picture of a down arrow disguised as the hookshot chain on the tile south of that left lever. I don't know how I didn't notice that the previous playthroughs and just winged it. Maybe because they looked too much like the hookshot rather than arrows. I lowered the water level, dived under a rolling spike pin, remembering the Palace of the Forest Sword, and collected my prize, the blue mail, which doesn't look like shit in this game. Remember how in A Link to the Past the blue and red mail looked awful because Link's hat was a different color than the rest of his tunic? With the blue mail it was yellow, with the red mail it was purple. Now all three mails looked great. And it's convenient that you no longer need the big key to open the big chest anymore, although that's pretty weird since they're literally called big chests. Wait, the rupees underwater respawn if you leave the room? If they weren't just mere blue rupees, that would be an incredibly broken way to grind rupees. It's bad enough that enemies respawn if you make a single screen transition, almost destroying the satisfaction of defeating them. I mean, it's not an NES game, there's no excuse for that kind of shitty programming anymore. Also, can I curse out the stupid BMOs in this game? For some absolutely terrible reason, they looked at Wind Waker, where a laser of all things caused knockback and had Link lying on the ground tediously getting up, and thought, let's apply that to a top-down Zelda game. That won't be horribly out of place and irritating and arbitrary at all. It's not bad enough that the laser is too far-reaching, hitting you from off-screen, and that now it gets fired in a circle around the BMOs, guaranteeing that you'll get hit at the end of the lever pulling at least once. At least in the original, you had a puzzle where if it was facing you, you knew that it was going to fire a laser and you could avoid it. It's not bad enough that they put a lever here that just summons more snakes, wasting your time and forcing you to spend more time with that statue. No, the BMOs has to knock Link down with a non-solid laser. That's not grating at all. I hate how long it takes to pull on the water level changing lever. It takes forever. It makes it tedious. I like that the hookshot is used to pull you onto a wall so you can fuse with it. That's pretty creative. Why do they put an enemy right near a tiny raft so it can knock you into the water? At least if you send it into the water, taking its shell, it dies instantly. Not that having an enemy that dies instantly to the water makes sense in a water habitat. In the Water Palace, you had those water spiders that would go along the water. They didn't have any problem with water. By the way, you can't just put bombs down like in Wind Waker. You have to throw them. That makes the bomb enemies more convenient. You can just attack them when they're in the right position, rather than aiming a bomb throw or... Oh wait, you can just place bombs wherever you want just by pressing the bomb button. I meant that if you pick up a bomb, you can't just put it down. You have to throw it. That's what I meant. Oh yeah, I forgot. The fortune teller gives you googly eye glasses to let you see hint ghosts. It's entirely worthless. Why? Because you have to get tokens from walking around with your 3DS to be able to take advantage of the hints. That is the worst idea for a hint system for newbies I've ever heard of. And it's odd since Ocarina of Time 3DS did that so much better with the Gossip Stones having advice on basically everything. Though it still sucked having to venture all the way to where they were to get advice, meaning that you won't choose them over looking up a guide on the internet anyways, in most cases. And with the boss, this game proves its clumsy inferiority to A Link to the Past once again because it's just, how do we take Argus and make it more annoying? Oh, I know! Let's make its attacks knock Link on its back, annoyingly forcing you to waste time watching him get up. Make the boss circle around, creating water spouts that somehow knock you down. And make the boss as a whole have a lot more health, so that not even using the hammer kills the eyes in one hit. Maybe going to this dungeon later with a better sword helps with that, but it's a dungeon that gives you the blue mail, the item that lets the enemies of the Dark World not deal ROM hack level damage to you. So they're punishing you for choosing the smart option by dealing with this dungeon earliest. This boss is just tedious, as the regenerating meter that the hookshot's forced to run on will run out. The eyes take multiple hits to kill, and the boss in its final phase is a brick wall of health that takes forever to die. The original boss is more fun by far. This boss forces you to take time out of your hookshotting it to run around the arena dodging fiery eyes, making things drag out. Ah yes, dragging out. The Link Between Worlds' trademark. It makes sense that the sage of this dungeon is Zora Queen, the sage of the water basically. I like that the elemental theming with the sage is a lot more subtle instead of just blatantly being, this is the sage of this element. Which is also kind of pointless since it's not like those sages have elemental powers or anything. When you fuse with the paintings of the sages, you go into a beautiful alternate dimension that's a ripoff of when you talk to the sages in Ocarina of Time. It's complete with music That was probably a direct ripoff of that. And I appreciate getting to experience at least something like this, having never played Ocarina of Time myself. But the same problem from Ocarina of Time is present here. What do the sages do here all day? Just standing around with no food, bathroom, or entertainment must be unbearably boring for all of them. This is a concept that only works in a video game, not when applied to actual characters, thinking about them as people. At least the sages don't have to die to get here this time. Now they can actually escape the dimension and live actual lives later. So the ending's not horribly depressing without them. Something this game actually does better than Link to the Past is the sages all being clearly established characters with distinct, memorable designs and characters, all being generally people you met before they got kidnapped. Though it doesn't stop them from being any less generic. One of them is even the witch who warps you places. Thank God her broom warps you on its own, but that just raises the question of why she had to be on it talking to you before and after you saved her. And again, the Zora Queen in the French version says we instead of I. She says nous instead of je. Like here, she says, literally, we have unfortunately no reward for you this time. We must ask you a new time for your aid. We are really sorry from having to ask of you that. We're counting on you, Link. And if the explanation is that she's referring to the other sages, well then they should have had the dialogue change as she's the only sage in the room, and she's had a history of making this wee mistake last time we talked to her, saying we depend on the pretty gem. I love Lorule's violin remix of the Dark World theme, which is why they changed it to a generic, heroic sounding remix as your reward for saving all the sages. Something that discouraged me from getting to the final dungeon in the game on multiple playthroughs, because it feels like a punishment for progressing with the game. And speaking of music, I absolutely love the theme that plays at the very beginning of the game on Hyrule Field before you meet Yuga, which is why they changed it to a more generic one after you meet Yuga.